This is Let me start off. Let me start over. It's been one of those days. Uh, Welcome to another episode on spiritual self-care, praying through the pandemic. That's too bright. uh, this is like take number 7 for me. It's not that I don't know what I want to say. I just don't have the words to say it today, and I'm really struggling here. So that's how my day is going. How's your day going? Anyhow, what I'm trying to get at, let's see if I can actually pull it off this time, is I want to talk about something. Again, it's hard to wrap the words around. I wish somebody would have tried to do it with me earlier on in my spiritual journey, my Christian journey, because I think it would have been very liberating. I think it would have saved me probably at least a decade of spiritual struggle and spiritual heartache. I wish somebody would have affirmed the spirituality that I landed upon. I'll say it this way, as a teenager. So not too long after becoming a Christian, I started attending a Baptist church. In spirituality, there were some conversations around prayer and spirituality in those circles, but not a whole lot. Spirituality is pretty much limited to read your Bible and be a good little Christian, and you've got your bases covered. At least in my context, that's pretty much what it came down to. But there wasn't a whole lot of focused conversations on prayer and how to pray. Prayer was a word that was thrown out, but it wasn't really defined a whole lot, and it wasn't really discussed a whole lot. Spirituality was taught by some as a positive thing. By others, it was viewed actually kind of negatively. And you don't even bring up mysticism because, like, Jesus don't approve. Jesus doesn't approve of mysticism. You're getting into the devil's territory if you think you're a mystic. That was kind of the mindset at the time. And so I had to kind of intuit a spiritual practice for myself because I didn't have any guidance in this area as a teenager. So, of course, coming from a Bible-based background, a Baptist background, the scriptures were important for me. But I think they were important for me in a different way that they were important for a lot of other people around me. I wasn't reading the Bible to get, like, history or ethics, or not just those things, right? Or to hear stories. I was actually reading the Bible to have an encounter with God. So my whole journey began from a mystical experience of God. And that's always been the thing that has been the most truthful, impactful part of my journey. It's got to be about encountering God. If it's not about that, what are we even doing? In my mind. So yes, you can get history from the Bible and good stories and ethical lessons and all of this stuff. But for me, I was opening the pages of the scriptures in order to encounter God, to hear a word from God. That was one part of my spirituality early on. The second part of my spirituality is I didn't even know what to call it. People these days call it contemplation, or actually not these days, but have called it contemplation for thousands of years. I didn't have a name for it. But as I was reading the scriptures and hearing sermons and stuff in church and going to Bible studies, I kept coming across these stories, especially like in the Old Testament, where people are having conversations with God, as if God is like right there in the room, face to face with them, as one friend would be face to face with another. I mean, as Moses' experience in the tent of meeting, it says that the Holy Spirit actually descended upon the tent, and God would speak to Moses face to face as one friend would speak to another, which I always thought was really cool. Then I had to wrestle with the implications of that. It's like, did God just speak to people that way back then, but God doesn't do that today? Or does God just speak to certain people that way and not others that way? Does God just speak to people like Moses, for example, that way and not other people? Well, then I came to the conclusion that, like, if God could speak that way to folks like Moses, David, right? Solomon, Abraham, maybe God could speak that way to me too. And I wasn't expecting, God to kind of personify in front of me and become visibly, tangibly, audibly present to me. But I just had this inclination that if I could just kind of stop monologuing at God so much, and I'll open it up to be a dialogue, in whatever form God would allow that to happen, maybe I would encounter the divine on a deeper level than I had been. Maybe something significant would happen if I could just adopt a posture of listening. And sure enough, I was right. After a few years of practicing this, I had several mystical experiences, as you could call them, which one of them was so powerful that it led me eventually to getting a collar around my neck. Now I am an ordained priest. Had it not been for that experience, I never would have gone down this journey. It was that significant of a life moment for me. But the reason why I'm making this video is not to talk about all of that. Maybe some of that's helpful for somebody, but the reason I'm making this video is because, now it's very dark in here, isn't it? Usually I do these things outside, but allergies are killing me. I digress. The reason I'm making this video is because I had stumbled across contemplation without knowing it, and I didn't really have anybody to encourage me in it, to say, good job, keep going. And in fact, actually, after I started sharing my spiritual practices with some people that I respected and revered and loved, a few years later down the road, they actually questioned it and questioned its usefulness, even talked about how I could be tempted by the devil if I keep doing what I'm doing. So stop doing it and just just read the scriptures and pray the scriptures is pretty much the advice that was given to me. And so because I viewed these people as being wiser and holier than myself, I did what they told me to do. It was one of the biggest mistakes I've made in my spiritual journey. The biggest mistake, I'd say, that I've made in my spiritual journey so far. But what I had discovered whenever I was a new Christian, a young Christian, when I had adopted this posture of listening, I realized that back then I could just sit in prayer, clear my mind of all thoughts, and just be attentive to the presence of God and listen for God's movement, God's voice, God's spirit stirring within me and around me. I didn't need, and I'll use this word, any crutches. I didn't need a mantra. I didn't need a centering prayer. I could have even bypassed the Bible and just gone straight into prayer and straight into the direct experience of God. And I didn't need a lot of coaching. I didn't need a method. I could just sit and I was there. I was tuned in. And if thoughts came through my mind, I intuitively practiced what everybody talks about these days. If you have thoughts come up while you're praying and you're trying to still your mind and be meditative or contemplative, just let the thought arise and let it pass. Just let it go. It's as simple as that. The more fuss you make about it, the more you pull yourself actually out of prayer. Well, I intuited that as a young man, and I could just sit and just pray, or just be in prayer and just sit and listen and empty my thoughts. And I didn't need to recite a mantra, like I said, like the Jesus prayer. I didn't need a centering word to recenter me, because I rarely lost my center. And I know that that was a gift that God gave me. But I think God gives a lot of people that gift. But the church has been too busy giving people crutches, when actually they could freely run with no need of crutches, with no need of aids. They could just sit, and I think people would surprise themselves by how quickly and how intensely they could encounter the presence of God if they would just sit in stillness and just be there with an intention of coming into the moment and just being fully present to God and allowing God to speak on God's own terms. I think a lot of people would surprise themselves that they have that capacity to do it. Just nobody has ever encouraged them to do it, because we're too busy giving aids, thinking that people are not deeply spiritual enough or equipped enough. Because in reality, it's not about your giftedness or anybody's giftedness. It's all about the grace of God. God is the one that gives the gifts. God is the one that gives the experience. All we have to do is just sit and receive it. Yeah. I don't know if any of that resonates with you. I hope so. If not, I'm doing this more for myself and articulating a need that I feel like I felt, a need that I wish I know that I had. I wish somebody would have come along, especially an ordained person, and affirmed my capacity for contemplative prayer. I wish somebody would have said, you don't need all these aids. Like, if you can get into a form of deep listening and being present to the presence of God without reading the Bible, you should still read the Bible, but like if you don't need it as like an intermediary type thing, right? If you can do it without a mantra, if you can do it without all of these rituals and just come and sit and be attuned to the presence of God, that's amazing. Don't do those other things. Do that, because that is the end point. I mean, the end game of any spiritual habit, ritual, whatever, even the liturgy on Sunday in church, is for you to get to a point where you just kind of become self-forgetful and fully just in tune and engaged with the presence of God. That's what it's all about. And if you can do that without needing all of these other aids or these other habits, do that. Chase it. Do it as long as you can. And maybe it would just be a temporary thing for a temporary season. Enjoy it while it lasts, and benefit from it as much as you can. And then if you still have need of aid, that's fine too, right? Everybody has their own journey. Everybody has their own kind of wiredness. I think I made that up. You get what I'm saying. But if you're somebody that can just sit and be still and still your heart and your mind and be present to God, don't feel the need to read the latest book on spirituality or adopt the latest spiritual fad, or don't feel the need to employ all these different aids and habits. You've got it. Just keep doing what you're doing and do it as much as you can and as much as you want. And yeah, it'll be a tremendous blessing for you. And if you're somebody like me, forgive me, I know this video is long, but it comes real close to my heart today. If you're somebody like me who had that gift for a season and lost it because of unwise counsel in your life, rest assured, you can get it back. So, yeah, if I can encourage you in any way that way, yeah. Hopefully, again, this made sense. I'm kind of deliriously tired after trying this like 7 times. Yes, but anyways, thank you for listening. Hopefully something in this was helpful for you. And if there's any way I can encourage you any further, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I love having conversations about such things in ways that are not so monological. Not so much a monologue. So please email me, call me if you know my number. Reach out to me. I'd be happy to have a conversation, to do whatever I can to encourage you in any way that I can. And I'm sure there's plenty of things that you could offer me as well that would be tremendously edifying for me. God bless. Thank you for listening. Peace.